The Mississippi steamboat's whistle cut through the humid night air like a scream, and Kane pressed herself deeper into the shadows between cargo crates, her heart hammering so violently she feared it might give away her position. 3 days. She had been aboard the Delta Queen. 3 days of hiding. 3 days of terror that Marcus Devereaux would discover which vessel she had fled upon and come for her before she could reach safety. The steamboat churned steadily southward through the dark waters, heading toward the small Missouri River town of Jefferson City, then further along toward the western frontier territories. Catherine had purchased passage all the way to Kansas City under a false name, using the last of her inheritance money that she had managed to hide from Marcus. Her hands trembled as she clutched the small carpet bag containing everything she owned now. 2 dresses, her mother's silver locket, and a Derringer pistol she prayed she would never need to use. She could still see Marcus's face in her mind, twisted with rage when she had refused his proposal. He was a wealthy New Orleans businessman, powerful and accustomed to getting what he wanted. When Catherine's father had died 6 months prior in 1872, leaving her orphaned at 22, Marcus had seen an opportunity. He had been her father's business partner, and he had assumed that Catherine would simply fall into his hands along with her father's share of the shipping company. But Catherine had discovered the truth about her father's death. It had not been the heart ailment the doctors claimed. She had found the arsenic bottle hidden in Marcus's desk drawer, had seen the ledgers showing how he had been embezzling from the company for years. Her father must have discovered it, and Marcus had silenced him. The moment Catherine realized Marcus knew that she knew, she had run. That very night, she had packed what she could carry and fled to the docks, bribing a deckhand to let her board the Delta Queen without appearing on the passenger manifest. Marcus had men everywhere in New Orleans, men who would drag her back to him or worse. The steamboat whistle blew again, this time announcing their approach to a landing. Catherine emerged cautiously from her hiding place, smoothing down her travel-worn blue dress. The other passengers were gathering their belongings, and she needed to blend in with them. She had kept to herself during the journey, taking meals in her cabin and avoiding the social gatherings in the main salon. Through the morning mist, she could see a rough wooden dock and beyond it, a collection of buildings that seemed more settlement than proper town. This was not Kansas City yet. The boat was making a stop at a smaller river trading post. Catherine watched as crew members secured the lines and lowered the gangplank. Several passengers disembarked, their boots echoing on the wooden planks. A deckhand approached her. "Miss, we will be here for about 2 hours taking on cargo and wood for the boilers. You are welcome to stretch your legs in town if you like." Catherine nodded but remained on deck, unwilling to venture far from her only means of escape. She gripped the railing and watched the activity below. Rough-looking men loaded crates onto the boat while others carried supplies down the gangplank. The settlement beyond looked primitive compared to New Orleans. A general store, a saloon, a few other structures she could not quite make out from this distance. Then she saw him. A man on a black horse sat motionless near the tree line beyond the landing, watching the steamboat with what seemed like casual interest. He wore a dark hat pulled low, and even from this distance, Catherine could sense something different about him. He was not part of the usual river landing crowd. He sat too still, too observant, her breath caught in her throat. Had Marcus's men tracked her this far already? The man on horseback did not move, just continued his silent observation. Catherine backed away from the railing, her instincts screaming danger. She needed to get to her cabin, needed to stay hidden until the boat departed. But as she turned, she collided hard with someone. Strong hands gripped her arms to steady her, and she looked up into a weathered face she recognized. Thomas Burke, one of Marcus's associates from New Orleans. Ice flooded her veins. "Well, Miss Kane," Burke said, his voice low and menacing, "Marcus has been very worried about you." Catherine tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Let me go." "I do not think so. You are coming back to New Orleans with me. Marcus has a riverboat heading north that will arrive here tomorrow morning. I am not going anywhere with you." Catherine's voice rose in panic and several passengers turned to look. Burke's face darkened. "Do not make a scene. You know what Marcus is capable of. Come quietly and perhaps he will be merciful." Catherine did the only thing she could think of. She screamed. The passengers nearby froze, uncertain what to do. Burke cursed and tried to drag her toward the gangplank, but Catherine fought him with everything she had. Her carpetbag fell to the deck, spilling its contents. "This woman is disturbed," Burke called out to the onlookers. "She ran away from her family. I am taking her home." "He is lying," Catherine shouted. "He works for a man who murdered my father," a crew member approached. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you to release the lady." Burke pulled a pistol from his coat. "Stay back. This is none of your concern." The crew member froze, hands raised. The other passengers scattered and Burke began backing toward the gangplank, dragging Catherine with him. She struggled against his iron grip, terror giving her strength, but he was too strong. They were halfway down the gangplank when a voice rang out from below. "Let her go." Burke stopped. The man from the Black Horse now stood at the bottom of the gangplank, one hand resting casually on the gun at his hip. Up close, Catherine could see he was younger than she had first thought, perhaps in his late 20s, with dark hair showing beneath his hat and gray eyes that held a quiet intensity. "This is not your business, Cowboy," Burke said, pressing the gun against Catherine's side. "I am making it my business." The stranger's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "You have 3 seconds to let the lady go. You think you are fast enough to draw before I shoot her." Burke's voice held a sneer, but Catherine felt the tremor in his hands. The stranger smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I know I am, but if you prefer, we can find out." Time seemed to slow. Catherine could hear her own heartbeat, feel Burke's rapid breathing, sense the tension coiling in the stranger below. Then Burke's nerve broke. He shoved Catherine hard, sending her tumbling down the gangplank, and raised his gun toward the stranger. He never got the shot off. The stranger's hand moved in a blur, and the crack of a gunshot echoed across the water. Burke's gun flew from his hand, and he clutched his bleeding fingers, crying out in pain. Catherine had landed hard on the wooden dock, the breath knocked from her. Strong hands helped her to her feet, and she found herself looking up into the stranger's gray eyes. "Are you hurt, miss?" he asked. She shook her head, too stunned to speak. On the gangplank, Burke was backing up toward the boat, cradling his injured hand. "Marcus will hear about this. He will find her. Then Marcus can come talk to me about it," the stranger called back. He turned to Catherine, his expression softening. "Can you ride a horse?" "What can you ride?" "Because in about 2 minutes, everyone on that boat is going to remember they need to mind their own business, and that man is going to come back with friends. If you want to get away from here, we need to move now." Catherine looked back at the steamboat, then at the stranger. She had no reason to trust him, no reason to think he was any safer than Burke or Marcus. But something in his eyes told her he meant what he said, and she had no other options. "I can ride," she said. He nodded and whistled sharply. The Black Horse trotted over, followed by a brown mare that had been waiting in the trees. "Her name is Cinnamon. She is gentle." The stranger helped Catherine mount, his hands steady and sure. She had ridden as a girl, but it had been years. She gripped the reins, trying to remember. "Just follow me," the stranger said, swinging up onto his black horse with practiced ease. "We will take it slow until we are out of sight." They rode away from the river, landing at a controlled pace that quickly increased to a gallop once they reached the cover of trees. Catherine held on, her skirts flying, her hair coming loose from its pins. Behind them, she could hear shouting, but it faded as they rode deeper into the wilderness. They rode for what felt like hours, though it was probably less than one. The stranger led them along trails that seemed to appear out of nowhere, through forests and across streams, always moving westward. Finally, as the sun climbed higher, he slowed his horse to a walk, and Catherine gratefully did the same. Her legs ached from gripping the saddle, and her hands were sore from clutching the reins. "We can rest for a few minutes," the stranger said, dismounting near a creek. He helped Catherine down, and her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. "Thank you," she managed, sinking onto a fallen log. "I do not even know your name." "Grant Baker," he said, offering her his canteen. "Most people call me Grant." Catherine took a long drink of cool water, then returned the canteen. "Catherine Kane, though I was traveling as Catherine Marlowe." "Running from something," Grant observed. "It was not a question." "Someone," Catherine corrected. "A man named Marcus Devereaux. He killed my father and wants to force me to marry him." "That man on the boat, Burke, works for him." Grant's expression darkened. "Devereaux, I have heard that name." "New Orleans shipping family." "Yes. My father was his business partner. When I discovered what Marcus had done, I ran." She looked up at Grant, really seeing him now in the daylight. He had a strong jaw, a few days' worth of beard, and those remarkable gray eyes that seemed to see right through pretense. His clothes were trail-worn but well-maintained. Dark trousers, a faded blue shirt, a leather vest, and a gun belt that showed signs of regular use. "Why did you help me?" Grant was quiet for a moment, watching the creek flow past. "Let us just say I know what it is like to be running from something." Before Catherine could ask what he meant, he stood. "We should keep moving. There is a town about 3 hours west of here called Victor. It is not much, but it has a hotel where you can rest and figure out your next move." "Victor, in Missouri?" "Yes, madam. It is a small cattle town mostly. I have a ranch about an hour outside of it." They mounted again and continued westward. As they rode, Grant told her about the country they were passing through. He had a quiet way of speaking, his voice low and measured, and Catherine found herself relaxing despite everything that had happened. He pointed out landmarks, warned her about low branches, and twice stopped to let the horses drink from streams. The sun was past its zenith when they finally saw Victor in the distance. It was indeed small, a single main street with perhaps 20 buildings total. Catherine could make out a church steeple, what looked like a hotel, several shops, and of course a saloon. A few people moved along the wooden sidewalks, and horses stood tied to hitching posts. "It is not New Orleans," Grant said, a hint of apology in his voice. "It is perfect," Catherine replied honestly. After days of terror, the quiet little town looked like paradise. Grant led them to a modest 2-story building with a sign that read Victor Hotel and Boarding House. They dismounted, and a young boy ran over to take the horses. Grant flipped him a coin. "Take good care of them, Jimmy." Inside, the hotel lobby was simple but clean. A woman in her 50s stood behind the front desk, her sharp eyes taking in Catherine's disheveled appearance and torn dress. "Grant Baker," the woman said warmly. "We do not see you in town often. What brings you here?" "Hello, Mrs. Fletcher. This is Miss Catherine Kane. She needs a room and probably a bath and a good meal." Mrs. Fletcher's expression softened. "Of course. You look worn out, dear. Let me get you settled." Grant paid for a week's lodging before Catherine could protest. "I am not sure I have enough money," she began, but he shook his head. "Consider it a loan. You can pay me back when you get settled." Mrs. Fletcher led Catherine upstairs to a small room with a bed, a dresser, and a wash basin. "I will have my husband bring up water for a bath. Are you hungry?" "Starving," Catherine admitted. "I will bring you a tray. You rest now." Mrs. Fletcher paused at the door. "Grant Baker is a good man, one of the best around here. If he brought you to Victor, you are safe." After the woman left, Catherine sat on the bed and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. She had escaped Marcus, but for how long? Burke knew she had been heading west. Would Marcus follow? Would he send more men? And what about Grant Baker? Why had he helped her? What did he expect in return? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Grant entered carrying her carpetbag. "One of the deckhands from the boat rowed out and gave this to Jimmy. Said he figured you might want your belongings." Catherine took the bag gratefully, clutching it to her chest. Everything she owned was in there. "Thank you for everything. I do not know how to repay you." Grant leaned against the doorframe, studying her with those gray eyes. "You do not owe me anything, but I think you should tell me the whole story. If this Marcus is as dangerous as you say, we need to figure out what to do if he comes looking for you." So Catherine told him everything. She told him about her father's death, about finding the arsenic, about Marcus's proposal and his rage when she refused. She told him about running to the docks, hiding on the steamboat, and Burke finding her. Grant listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as the story unfolded. "This Marcus sounds like a man who does not give up easily," Grant said when she finished. "He is not. He is powerful in New Orleans and he has connections everywhere. I thought if I could just get far enough west, somewhere he could not reach me." "You can stay in Victor," Grant said. "It is remote enough that it might take him a while to track you here, and the people in this town look after their own. If you stay, they will consider you one of them." "Stay," Catherine had not thought beyond escaping. "I do not have any skills. I do not know what I could do here." "Can you read and write?" "Of course." "Then you are already more educated than half the people in this county. The school teacher just left to get married in Kansas. The town needs someone to teach the children. It does not pay much, but it would be enough to live on." Hope flickered in Catherine's chest. "Do you think they would hire me? I know the mayor. I will talk to him." Grant pushed off from the doorframe. "You rest now. I will be back tomorrow." After he left, Mrs. Fletcher's husband brought up a large tub and buckets of hot water. Catherine stripped off her ruined dress and sank into the bath with a sigh of relief. She scrubbed away days of fear and grime, washing her long, dark hair and finally feeling clean again. When she emerged, wrapped in a borrowed robe, she found a tray of food waiting: fresh bread, butter, roasted chicken, and vegetables. She ate ravenously, then fell into bed and slept for 14 hours straight. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of activity on the street below. For a moment, she did not know where she was and panic seized her. Then memory returned and she took a deep breath. She was in Victor. She was safe. Grant had helped her. Catherine dressed in her other gown, a simple gray dress that was only slightly less travel-worn than the blue one. She pinned up her hair and went downstairs. Mrs. Fletcher was in the lobby. "Well, you look much better, dear. There is breakfast in the dining room," and Grant Baker left a message that he would be by around noon. The dining room held a few other boarders, all men who tipped their hats politely but did not intrude. Catherine ate eggs and bacon and fresh biscuits with jam, marveling at how good simple food could taste when you were not running for your life. True to his word, Grant arrived just before noon. He had cleaned up since yesterday, his jaw freshly shaved, his hair still damp. Catherine felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Miss Kane," he greeted. "I spoke with Mayor Henderson. He would like to meet you about the teaching position. Are you up for that?" "Yes, absolutely." They walked together down the main street. In daylight, Catherine could see Victor more clearly. It was rough around the edges, the buildings weathered by sun and wind, but there was a sense of community here. People greeted Grant warmly, and their eyes were curious but kind when they looked at Catherine. The mayor's office was above the general store. Richard Henderson was a portly man in his 60s with kind eyes and a bushy mustache. He stood when they entered, shaking Catherine's hand warmly. "Miss Kane, Grant has told me about your situation. I am very sorry for your troubles. Please sit." They settled into chairs, and the mayor continued. "We are in desperate need of a teacher. The last one, Miss Sarah, married a rancher from Kansas and moved away 3 weeks ago. We have about 20 children in town who need educating. The job pays $40 a month plus room and board in a small cottage near the schoolhouse. Would you be interested? $40 a month." It was not much, but it was enough. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes, very much. But you should know that I have never taught before." "Can you read, write, and cipher?" "Yes." "Then you are qualified. Most of what the children need is someone patient who can teach them their letters and numbers. The older ones need more advanced lessons, but we have books. You will figure it out." "When would I start?" "Tomorrow, if you are able. The children have been without instruction for too long." Catherine nodded, overwhelmed. "Thank you. I will do my best." As they left the mayor's office, Grant touched her elbow gently. "Congratulations, Miss Kane. Welcome to Victor. Please call me Catherine." "Catherine," he repeated, and she liked the way her name sounded in his voice. They walked to the schoolhouse, a small white building at the edge of town. Inside were rows of wooden desks, a pot-bellied stove, a chalkboard, and shelves of books. The cottage beside it was tiny, just one room with a bed, a table, and a small stove, but it was clean and private. "It is not much," Grant said, watching her face. "It is wonderful," Catherine replied honestly. "It is more than I hoped for." Over the next few days, Catherine settled into her new life. Mrs. Fletcher helped her buy a few necessities from the general store: fabric for a new dress, thread, paper and pencils for the school, basic food supplies. The town women welcomed her warmly, grateful to have a teacher again for their children. Grant came by every day, checking on her, helping her move into the cottage, bringing firewood. Catherine found herself looking forward to his visits, the way his quiet presence made her feel safe. They would talk while she organized the schoolroom, and gradually she learned his story. Grant had grown up in Texas, the youngest son of a rancher. When the war came in the early 60s, his 2 older brothers had gone to fight for the Confederacy. Both had died. After the war, Grant's father, broken by grief, had drunk himself to death. Grant had sold the Texas ranch and moved to Missouri, wanting a fresh start away from all the memories. He had bought land outside Victor 5 years ago and built up a modest but successful cattle operation. He employed 3 ranch hands and ran about 200 head of cattle. He worked hard, kept to himself mostly, and had earned the respect of everyone in town. "You ever get lonely?" Catherine asked one evening as they sat on the steps of the schoolhouse, watching the sun set. Grant was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," he finally said. "I thought I wanted solitude, wanted to be away from people, but lately I have realized that being alone is not the same as being at peace." Catherine understood what he meant. She had been surrounded by people in New Orleans, her father's business associates, servants, society gatherings, but she had been profoundly lonely, especially after her father died. "I am glad you were at that river landing," she said softly. "I do not know what would have happened if you had not been there." Grant looked at her, and something passed between them in that look, something unspoken but powerful. "I am glad I was there too." Catherine started teaching the next Monday. The children ranged in age from 6 to 15, some eager to learn, others clearly preferring to be elsewhere. She was nervous at first, but she found that she enjoyed teaching. She loved watching understanding dawn on a child's face, loved the questions they asked, loved seeing them progress. The days developed a rhythm. She taught from 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, then spent the evenings preparing lessons and correcting work. Grant rode into town 2 or 3 times a week, always finding an excuse to stop by. Sometimes he brought her fresh meat from a deer he had shot, sometimes just his company. 2 weeks after Catherine arrived in Victor, Grant invited her to visit his ranch. It was Sunday, her day off from teaching. He arrived at the cottage with both horses, Cinnamon saddled and ready. "I thought you might like to see the countryside," he said. "And I make a decent Sunday dinner if you trust a cowboy's cooking." Catherine laughed. "I trust you." They rode out of Victor into rolling prairie land dotted with trees. The September weather was perfect, warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze. Catherine had gotten more comfortable in the saddle over the past weeks, and she found she enjoyed riding. There was a freedom to it, a sense of possibility. Grant's ranch was modest but well-maintained. A sturdy house, a barn, corrals, and a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. The land stretched as far as Catherine could see, golden grass waving in the wind. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing. "It is beautiful," Catherine said. Pride touched Grant's face. "I built the house myself. Took me 2 years, working on it between cattle drives and breaking horses." Inside, the house was simple but comfortable. A main room with a fireplace and furniture Grant had made himself, a kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. Everything was neat and clean, which surprised Catherine somehow. "What? You thought a bachelor cowboy would live in a pigsty?" Grant teased, catching her expression. "Maybe a little," Catherine admitted with a smile. Grant laughed, and Catherine realized it was the first time she had heard him truly laugh. The sound transformed his usually serious face, made him look younger, more carefree. He cooked dinner steak, potatoes, biscuits, and they ate at his table while Grant told her stories about the ranch, about the cattle business, about the occasional challenges with rustlers and coyotes and harsh winters. Catherine talked about her students, about the challenges of teaching children at such different levels. "Young Timothy Harrison asked me today why we need to learn history when we should just focus on the future," Catherine said. "I told him that we study the past so we do not make the same mistakes again." "Smart answer," Grant said, "though people do not seem to learn from history very well." After dinner, they sat on Grant's porch, watching the sun set over the prairie. Catherine felt more at peace than she had in months, maybe years. Here in this wild, open country, far from New Orleans and Marcus and all the fear, she was beginning to feel like herself again. "Catherine," Grant said suddenly, his voice serious, "I need to ask you something." Her heart sped up. "What? Do you think this Marcus will give up looking for you?" The question shattered the peaceful moment. Catherine wrapped her arms around herself. "No, I do not think he will. Marcus does not accept defeat, and I know too much about what he did to my father. Then we need to be prepared. If he finds out you are here, he will come, I know." Catherine's voice was small. "I am sorry, I should not have come to Victor. I am putting everyone in danger." "That is not what I meant." Grant turned to face her, his gray eyes intense. "You belong here now. The town has accepted you." "I have accepted you. We protect our own. If Marcus comes, he will find that small frontier towns are not as easy to push around as he might think. Grant, he is dangerous. He has money and men who will do anything he asks. So do I. Well, maybe not money, but I have friends. I have people in this town who would stand with me, and I am not afraid of Marcus Devereaux or anyone else." Catherine felt tears threaten. Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Grant reached out and gently wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. His touch was warm, careful. I think you know why. Catherine's breath caught. She did know, had known for days now, but had been afraid to acknowledge it. Grant had feelings for her, and God help her, she had feelings for him too. It was too fast, too sudden, but it was also undeniable. Grant, I am not sure this is wise. I am still running, still in danger. I cannot ask you to get more involved than you already are. You are not asking, I am offering. His hand lingered on her cheek. Catherine, I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks. But I have not felt this way about anyone in a long time. Maybe ever. When I saw you on that gangplank, something just clicked. I knew I had to help you. And every day since, I have looked for excuses to see you, to be near you. I feel the same way, Catherine whispered. But I am frightened. Not just of Marcus, but of this. What if I bring disaster to your life? What if caring about me destroys everything you have built here? Then we will deal with it together. Grant's voice was steady, certain. I spent 5 years building this ranch, building a life, but it has been an empty life. Just going through motions. You make me feel alive again. You make me want more than just surviving. Catherine leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. I want that too. I want a life, a real life, not just running and hiding. Then let me help you build it, here in Victor, with me. When Catherine opened her eyes, Grant was looking at her with such tenderness that her heart ached. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he leaned closer. When his lips met hers, it was gentle, tentative, asking permission. Catherine answered by kissing him back, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart beating as rapidly as her own. The kiss deepened, becoming more certain. Grant's arms came around her, pulling her close but not crushing, always careful. Catherine felt safe in his embrace, but also something more. Desire, hope, the promise of something beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Grant rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, not like that, he added quickly. I just mean stay here at the ranch. You can have my room, I will sleep in the bunkhouse with the hands. I just do not want to let you out of my sight yet. Catherine smiled. I trust you. They stayed up late talking, sitting close on the porch, Grant's arm around her shoulders. They talked about everything and nothing. Childhoods, dreams, fears, favorite books, best memories. Catherine learned that Grant loved thunderstorms, hated turnips, and had always wanted to see the ocean. Grant learned that Catherine played piano, was terrified of spiders, and had once dreamed of being a writer. Finally, exhausted, they went inside. Grant showed Catherine to his room, giving her one of his shirts to sleep in. I will be right outside if you need anything, he promised. Catherine slept better than she had in weeks, wrapped in Grant's scent, feeling protected. The next morning, Grant took her back to Victor before school started. They rode in comfortable silence, hands occasionally touching. At the schoolhouse, Grant dismounted and helped Catherine down, his hands lingering on her waist. Can I see you again? Soon, he asked. I would like that. Over the following weeks, Grant and Catherine spent every possible moment together. He came to town more often, sometimes just to watch her teach through the schoolhouse window, making sure she was safe. On Sundays, they rode out to the ranch or explored the countryside. They had picnics by streams, watched storms roll across the prairie, and talked endlessly. The townspeople noticed, of course. In a small town, nothing went unnoticed, but their response was universally positive. People smiled when they saw Grant and Catherine together, made knowing comments, asked when they might hear wedding bells. They are getting ahead of themselves, Catherine said one evening. Her cheeks flushed as Mrs. Fletcher had made yet another comment about what a handsome couple they made. Are they? Grant asked quietly. Catherine looked up at him, her heart skipping. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that everyone in town already thinks of you as mine and me as yours. I am saying that I wake up thinking about you and fall asleep thinking about you. I am saying that I love you, Catherine Kane, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "Grant, I love you too. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you stood at the bottom of that gangplank and faced down Burke. But Marcus is still out there. I am still in danger. How can I commit to you when my past might destroy our future? Then we face it together. Marry me, Catherine. Marry me and let me protect you, stand with you, build a life with you. Whatever comes, we will handle it as husband and wife. Are you sure? Are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" Grant pulled her close, his eyes intense. "I have never been more certain of anything." Catherine kissed him, pouring all her love and fear and hope into that kiss. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Yes, yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Victor, with the whole town in attendance. Catherine wore a cream-colored dress that Mrs. Fletcher and the other town women had helped her make. Grant wore a new black suit that made him look unbearably handsome. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers. The town threw them a reception at the saloon, which had been cleaned up and decorated for the occasion. There was music and dancing and more food than Catherine had seen in one place since leaving New Orleans. Everyone wanted to congratulate them, to wish them well. As Catherine danced with her new husband, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she had truly escaped her past. Maybe Marcus would never find her. Maybe she could have this life, this love, this happiness. But even as she thought it, she saw Grant's eyes scanning the crowd, watchful, protective. He was not taking any chances. Neither of them truly believed they were safe yet. They spent their wedding night at the ranch. Grant carried Catherine over the threshold, both of them laughing. Inside, he set her down gently, suddenly nervous. "I want you to know," he began, "that we do not have to rush anything. I know this is all very sudden, and if you need time," Catherine silenced him with a kiss. "Grant, I love you, I want this, I want you. I have never been more certain of anything." Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, Grant always careful, always making sure Catherine was comfortable. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Catherine's head on Grant's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I never thought I could be this happy," she whispered. Grant kissed the top of her head. "Neither did I. You have given me a reason to live again, Catherine, a reason to hope." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, safe in their own small world. The next morning, Grant taught Catherine how to make coffee the way he liked it, strong and black. They cooked breakfast together, laughing as Catherine burned the first batch of eggs. Then Grant took her out to see the ranch properly, introducing her to the cattle, the horses, the ranch hands who lived in the bunkhouse. The 3 ranch hands, Tom, Henry, and young Billy, were clearly delighted that Grant had married. They doffed their hats respectfully to Catherine and promised to help her however they could. "The boss has been alone too long," Tom, the oldest, told Catherine. "It is good to see him happy." Catherine divided her time between teaching in town during the week and being at the ranch on weekends. It was not easy managing both, but she loved both her students and her new life with Grant too much to give up either. A month passed, then 2. Catherine began to relax, to truly believe she might be safe. The nightmares about Marcus faded. Her life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Then, on a cold November morning, a stranger arrived in Victor. Catherine was teaching arithmetic to the younger children when she saw him through the window. A well-dressed man in a fine coat, riding an expensive horse, looking out of place in the rough frontier town. Her blood ran cold. He did not look like Burke, but he had that same air about him, that sense of danger barely concealed. Catherine forced herself to focus on her students, but her hands trembled as she wrote on the chalkboard. When school let out, she did not go straight home as usual. Instead, she walked to the general store where Mr. Peterson, one of the town men Grant trusted, was usually working. "Mr. Peterson," she said quietly, "there is a stranger in town, a well-dressed man on a fine horse. Could you please send word to Grant?" Peterson's friendly expression turned serious. He understood immediately. "Of course, Mrs. Baker. Billy," he called to a young boy, "ride out to the Baker ranch fast as you can. Tell Grant there is a stranger in town and Catherine needs him." The boy took off running. Catherine waited in the store, trying not to let her fear show. Other customers came and went, and several mentioned the stranger, curious about who he was and what he wanted. "He is asking questions," Mrs. Henderson said, "about newcomers to town, particularly any young women who might have arrived in the past few months." Catherine felt sick. He was looking for her. After all this time, Marcus had found her. Grant arrived within an hour, riding hard, his face grim. He found Catherine still in the general store, and relief flooded his features when he saw her safe. But his expression quickly turned serious again. "Where is this stranger?" he asked Peterson. "Last I saw, he was at the saloon." Grant turned to Catherine. "I want you to go to the mayor's office and stay there. Do not come out until I come for you. Grant, please be careful. If Marcus sent him, I will be fine. Go now." Catherine reluctantly obeyed, though every instinct screamed at her to stay with her husband. The mayor's office was empty, the mayor having gone home for the day, but the door was unlocked. Catherine let herself in and waited, pacing, praying. Grant found the stranger at the saloon, sitting at a table nursing a whiskey. He was indeed well-dressed, his suit expensive, his boots polished. But his eyes were cold, calculating. "You must be Grant Baker," the man said as Grant approached. "I am, and you are." "Name is Samuel Hart. I am a private investigator from New Orleans. I am looking for a woman named Catherine Kane. I have reason to believe she may have come through this area." He pulled out a photograph and showed it to Grant. It was Catherine, younger, in a fancy dress, clearly from before her father died. Grant's expression did not change as he looked at it. "Why are you looking for her? Her family is worried about her. She left New Orleans suddenly without telling anyone where she was going. They want to make sure she is safe." "Is that so? And who hired you?" Hart smiled thinly. "A family friend, Marcus Devereaux. Perhaps you have heard of him." "Cannot say I have. He is quite influential in New Orleans. He and Miss Kane's late father were business partners. When her father passed, Miss Kane became quite distressed. Mr. Devereaux is concerned about her mental state." Grant leaned back in his chair, his posture casual but his eyes hard. "That is an interesting story. Here is what I think actually happened. I think Marcus Devereaux killed Catherine's father and she found out. I think she ran because she feared for her life. And I think you are here to drag her back so Devereaux can silence her permanently." Hart's smile vanished. "Those are serious accusations." "Yes, they are. So here is what you are going to do. You are going to finish that whiskey, get on your expensive horse, and ride back to New Orleans. You are going to tell Marcus Devereaux that Catherine Kane is dead. You are going to tell him she died in a riverboat accident and her body was never recovered. Can you do that?" "And why would I do that?" "Because Catherine is under my protection now. She is my wife, which makes her a citizen of Victor, and this town protects its own. If you try to take her or harm her in any way, you will have to go through me and every man in this town. And I promise you that will not end well for you." Hart studied Grant for a long moment. "Mr. Devereaux is not a man who accepts defeat. He has resources. He can make things very difficult for you," He can try, but this is Missouri, not Louisiana. His money and influence do not reach as far out here, and I am not afraid of him." Another long silence. Then Hart stood, tossing back the rest of his whiskey. "I will deliver your message, but I cannot guarantee how Mr. Devereaux will respond." "I can live with that." Hart left the saloon. Grant waited, watching through the window as the investigator mounted his horse and rode out of town heading east. Only then did Grant go to collect Catherine. She fell into his arms the moment she saw him. "What happened? Is he gone?" "For now. I told him you were dead. I do not know if he believed me, but I made it clear that coming after you here would not be easy." Catherine pulled back, looking up at her husband. "Grant, I am so sorry. I never wanted to bring this trouble to you." "Stop apologizing. You are my wife. Your troubles are my troubles. We are in this together." He kissed her forehead. "But we do need to be careful. I do not trust that Hart actually left. He might be watching the town, trying to see if I was lying." For the next several days, Grant stayed close to Victor, never letting Catherine out of his sight for long. The town men, understanding the situation, kept watch as well. There was no sign of Hart, but the tension remained. A week later, a telegram arrived for Grant from a friend in Kansas City. Catherine was with him at the general store when he read it, and she saw his expression change. "What is it?" Grant handed her the telegram. It was brief. Hart reported back to Devereaux. Devereaux not satisfied. "Hiring more men, be ready." Catherine felt her knees weaken. "He is coming." "We do not know that for certain. He might just be trying to verify Hart's report." But 3 days later, on a gray December morning, 4 men rode into Victor. They were rough-looking, nothing like the civilized Hart. These were hired guns, the kind of men who would do anything for money. They went straight to the saloon, which in a town like Victor served as the informal information hub. Within an hour, everyone in town knew they were asking about Catherine Kane, showing her photograph, offering money for information. Grant called an emergency meeting at the church that evening. Most of the town turned out. Catherine sat beside her husband, terrified, as Grant explained the situation to everyone. These men were sent by Marcus Devereaux. He is a dangerous man from New Orleans who killed Catherine's father and has been hunting her. He wants to force her to marry him to get control of her father's business shares. I need to know if this town is willing to stand with us against these men." There was a moment of silence. Then Mayor Henderson stood. "Mrs. Baker is one of us now. She teaches our children. She is a good woman. Of course we stand with her." One by one, other men stood, voicing their agreement. Even some of the women stood, faces determined. Catherine felt tears streaming down her face at this outpouring of support from people she had known for only a few months. The plan was simple. The townspeople would refuse to give the hired guns any information. If the men became violent, the town was prepared to defend itself. Grant and several other men would stand guard, making it clear that Catherine was not unprotected. The 4 hired guns stayed in Victor for 3 days, growing increasingly frustrated. No one would talk to them. Shop owners refused to serve them. The hotel told them there were no rooms available, forcing them to camp outside town. On the 3rd night, they made their move. Catherine and Grant were in their cottage when they heard horses approaching. Grant immediately blew out the lamps and moved to the window, gun in hand. "Catherine, get in the back room and stay down." "Grant, now." Catherine obeyed, crawling into the small bedroom and crouching beside the bed, her heart hammering. She heard voices outside, rough and demanding. "We know Catherine Kane is in there. Send her out and nobody gets hurt." Grant's voice came clear and strong. "You are on private property. You need to leave now." "We are not leaving without the woman. Marcus Devereaux is paying us too well to go back empty-handed." "Then you are not going back at all." Shots rang out. Catherine screamed and covered her head, terrified. More shots, men shouting. The sound seemed to go on forever, though it was probably only seconds. Then silence. "Catherine," Grant called. "It is safe. You can come out." Catherine stumbled out of the bedroom on shaking legs. Grant was reloading his gun, his expression grim. Through the broken window she could see shapes on the ground. They two are dead. The other two ran. Grant turned to her, pulling her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" "No, are you? I am fine, but they will be back, and next time they will bring more men. This is not over." Mayor Henderson and several other town men arrived, drawn by the gunfire. They examined the two dead men, going through their pockets. "Found this," Peterson said, holding up a letter. Grant took it and read, his expression darkening. "What does it say?" Catherine asked. "It is from Marcus. Instructions to his men. He is offering $5,000 for you to be delivered alive to New Orleans. $500 if they cannot take you alive." Catherine felt sick. "He has put a bounty on my head." "That son of a—" Grant stopped himself, taking a deep breath. "We need to end this. We need to deal with Marcus directly." "How? He is in New Orleans. We are here." "Then we go to New Orleans." "Grant, that is insane. That is exactly what Marcus wants. He is much more powerful there, maybe, but he has committed crimes. He murdered your father. He has sent men to kidnap or kill you. If we can get evidence, if we can get the law involved properly, we can end this." Mayor Henderson nodded slowly. "The boy has a point. This Devereaux thinks he can reach out here with impunity because he is rich and powerful. But murder is murder, no matter where it happens. If you can prove he killed Catherine's father, even his money cannot save him." Catherine looked at her husband, at the determination in his gray eyes. "You are serious about this?" "Completely. We cannot live our lives waiting for the next group of hired guns to show up. We need to finish this." Over the next few days, they made plans. Grant would take Catherine to St. Louis first, where she would be safe with Grant's cousin, a sheriff who had the resources to protect her. Then Grant would continue to New Orleans with two of the town men, Henry and Tom, who volunteered to go with him. They would gather evidence against Marcus, take it to the authorities, and force justice. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but Catherine could see no other option. Marcus would never stop coming after her. The only way to be truly free was to put him in prison or the grave. They left Victor on a cold January morning in 1873. Catherine rode beside Grant, heavily armed men from the town escorting them to the nearest train station, 2 days away. She was leaving behind her students, her little cottage, the life she had just begun to build. But she would never be able to fully enjoy that life with the threat of Marcus hanging over her head. The train journey to St. Louis took 2 days. Grant's cousin, Sheriff Robert Baker, met them at the station. He was an older, grayer version of Grant with the same steady competence. "Grant told me the situation in his telegram," Robert said after introductions. "You will be safe here, Mrs. Baker. I give you my word." Catherine hugged Grant tightly before he left for New Orleans with Henry and Tom. "Promise me you will be careful. Promise me you will come back. I promise." "I am coming back to you, Catherine. Nothing will stop that." He kissed her deeply, not caring who saw. "I love you. I love you too." Watching him board the train south, Catherine felt like her heart was being torn out. But she forced herself to stay strong. Grant was doing this for her, for them, so they could have a real future. The wait in St. Louis was agonizing. Sheriff Baker and his wife, Martha, were kind and welcoming, but Catherine could barely eat, barely sleep. Every day that passed without word from Grant felt like an eternity. Finally, after 2.5 weeks, a telegram arrived. "Mission successful. Devereaux arrested, coming home." Catherine cried with relief. 3 days later, Grant walked through the sheriff's door, tired and dusty but unharmed. Catherine threw herself into his arms and they held each other for a long time. Later, over dinner, Grant told the story. They had gone to New Orleans and met with Catherine's father's lawyer, who had always suspected something was wrong with the death. With the lawyer's help, they had gathered evidence: the arsenic bottle, testimony from servants about Marcus's behavior, the cooked ledgers showing embezzlement. But the breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Marcus's own business associate, Burke, the man who had tried to capture Catherine on the riverboat, had agreed to testify against Marcus in exchange for leniency. Burke had been present when Marcus poisoned Catherine's father. He had helped cover it up, but his conscience had been eating at him, especially after getting shot by Grant. With Burke's testimony and the other evidence, the authorities had arrested Marcus. He was currently awaiting trial for murder and attempted kidnapping. His money and connections were not enough to save him this time. "It is really over?" Catherine asked, hardly daring to believe it. "It is really over," Grant confirmed. "You are free." They returned to Victor as heroes. The town threw a celebration, relieved that the threat was ended. Catherine returned to teaching, and life gradually settled back into its peaceful rhythm. Spring came, bringing new life to the prairie. Catherine discovered she was pregnant in April. Grant was overjoyed, already making plans for the nursery, talking about teaching his son or daughter to ride. "What if it is twins?" Catherine teased. "Then we will need two of everything." Their son was born in December of 1873, a healthy boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him James after Catherine's father. Grant was a devoted father, always finding time despite the ranch work to hold his son, sing to him, tell him stories. Catherine took a year off from teaching to care for James, but eventually returned, the town women helping watch the baby during school hours. Life was full and happy. The ranch prospered. Catherine's students thrived. Grant and Catherine's love deepened with each passing year. In the summer of 1875, word came that Marcus Devereaux had been found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Catherine felt a final weight lift from her shoulders. He would never threaten her or her family again. A second child came in 1876, a daughter they named Sarah. Then another son, Robert, in 1878. The house Grant had built for himself now overflowed with life and laughter and love. Catherine sometimes thought back to that terrifying day on the riverboat, to Burke grabbing her, to her absolute certainty that her life was over. She thought about Grant standing at the bottom of that gangplank, a stranger offering salvation. She thought about how close she had come to never experiencing this life, this love, this family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Grant took Catherine back to the spot where he had first proposed, on the porch of the ranch house overlooking the prairie. The children were with Mrs. Fletcher in town, giving them rare time alone. 10 years, Catherine marveled, leaning against her husband's solid warmth. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes it feels like forever." "Any regrets?" Grant asked. "Not a single one. You saved my life that day on the riverboat, but you did more than that. You gave me a life worth living. You gave me love and family and happiness I never dreamed possible." "You did the same for me," Grant said softly. "I was just existing before you, just going through motions. You made me feel alive again. You gave me a purpose beyond just surviving." They kissed as the sun set over their land, over the life they had built together. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows as all lives do. Grant's ranch became one of the most successful in the county. Catherine's students went on to become teachers, ranchers, business owners, carrying forward the education she had given them. Their children grew strong and healthy, eventually having children of their own. Marcus Devereaux died in prison in 1889. When Catherine received word, she felt nothing but a vague sadness for what might have been if he had chosen a different path. But mostly, she felt grateful. Grateful that his evil had not destroyed her. Grateful that in running from him, she had run straight into Grant. Grant and Catherine grew old together on their ranch, surrounded by children and grandchildren. They still rode out into the prairie sometimes, just the two of them, remembering the early days of their love. Catherine continued teaching until she was 60, finally retiring when her joints made standing at the chalkboard too painful. The town threw her a massive celebration, former students traveling from all over to honor the woman who had taught them to read and write and think. Grant worked the ranch until he was 70, finally turning the daily operations over to their son James while he took on an advisory role. He still rose early every morning, still walked the land, still kept watch over everything he had built. On a warm summer evening in 1905, Grant and Catherine sat on their porch as they had thousands of times before. They were both in their 70s now, their hair white, their faces lined with age. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young people who had fallen in love on a frontier town's streets more than 3 decades earlier. "You remember the first thing I said to you?" Grant asked. Catherine smiled. "You said let her go." "Best decision I ever made getting involved. Best decision I ever made was trusting you." Grant took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "I would do it all again, you know, every minute, every challenge, everything." "So would I," Catherine agreed. "Every single moment." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, casting gold and orange across the prairie grass. Their children's voices drifted from inside the house. Several generations gathered for a family dinner. The life they had created together continued to grow and flourish, spreading out into the world like roots from a mighty tree. Grant and Catherine Baker lived another 10 years, dying within months of each other in 1915. The entire county turned out for their funerals, hundreds of people whose lives they had touched. Former students, ranch hands, fellow townspeople, all came to pay their respects to the couple who had become legends in Victor. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a shared headstone that read, "Grant Baker, 1843–1915, and Catherine Kane Baker, 1850–1915. They found each other in danger and built a life in love." Their children and grandchildren continued to tell the story for generations. How Catherine had arrived running from danger, how Grant had been her only safe haven, how their love had been forged in courage and had endured everything life could throw at them. It became a family legend, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments in life lead to the best, that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected sources, and that true love, once found, can conquer anything. The ranch remained in the Baker family for another 100 years. The schoolhouse in Victor was eventually renamed Catherine Baker Elementary School. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew across the prairie grass, locals swore they could sometimes see 2 figures on horseback riding through the sunset, a cowboy and his lady, together for eternity in the land they had loved. Their love story had started with terror and flight, with danger and uncertainty. But it had become something beautiful, something lasting, something that proved that even in the wildest, harshest places, love could not only survive but thrive. Grant and Catherine had found each other against all odds, had built a life together that became a legacy, and had proved that sometimes the best love stories are the ones that start with a stranger offering help to someone in desperate need. From the moment Grant stood at the bottom of that gangplank and said, Let her go to the moment they were laid to rest side by side. Their lives had been intertwined in a bond that death itself could not break. They had been each other's safe haven, each other's greatest adventure, each other's truest love. And in the end, that was all that mattered.